Welcome back to the Sleepy Mind channel. Tonight we explore ladybugs, following their physical structure, movement, and life processes as they unfold over long periods of time and shape the system in steady, observable ways. If you find these long, calm science documentaries useful, you can like the video and subscribe for more. If you choose to leave a comment about where you are listening from, it is always interesting to see how far these stories travel. Let us begin. Ladybugs belong to a family of beetles known as Coccinellidae, a group that includes more than 6,000 documented species. Most measure only a few millimeters across, yet together they occupy an enormous range of environments, from temperate forests and open grasslands to agricultural fields and urban gardens. Their small size allows them to move through plant structures with ease, while their widespread distribution links distant regions through shared biological patterns. Although they are often spoken of as a single insect, ladybugs vary widely in appearance. Some carry bold red shells with dark spots, while others appear orange, yellow, pale cream, or nearly black. Spot patterns differ between species and remain constant throughout the adult stage. They are formed as pigments spread across the hardened outer shell after emergence, creating markings that help scientists distinguish one species from another. Ladybugs are found on every continent except Antarctica. Their presence follows plant growth closely because their food sources depend on living vegetation. As temperatures rise and fall through the year, ladybugs shift their position slowly across the landscape, moving upward through stems and leaves during warmer periods and settling into sheltered spaces when conditions cool. Human awareness of ladybugs stretches back centuries. In agricultural records from Europe and Asia, they appear as helpful insects linked to healthier crops. Over time, this association contributed to their place in folklore, where they came to be seen as symbols of good fortune. These cultural meanings developed alongside careful observation of their real effects within farming systems. Modern research continues to expand understanding of ladybug diversity. New species are still being identified, particularly in regions with high biodiversity. Even within a single garden, multiple species may coexist, each differing slightly in size, color, and behavior, while sharing the same plants and seasonal rhythms. Together, these characteristics place ladybugs within a larger system shaped by climate, plant growth, and time. Their movements are small and local, yet repeated across vast areas. Through this repetition, patterns become visible, linking tiny physical structures to long ecological cycles that unfold steadily and without interruption. Ladybugs are insects, sharing the defining features of the class Insecta. Their bodies are divided into three main regions: a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, each serving a distinct function. 6 jointed legs extend from the thorax, allowing steady movement across leaves and stems. 2 antennae project forward from the head, constantly sampling the air and nearby surfaces through touch and chemical detection. As beetles, ladybugs belong to the order Coleoptera. This group is characterized by hardened forewings that form a protective shell. In ladybugs, this shell curves smoothly over the body, creating a compact, dome-like shape. Beneath it, delicate flight wings are folded with precision. When the insect prepares to fly, the shell opens outward, and the thin wings unfold, beating rapidly to lift the body into the air. The scientific classification of ladybugs reflects their shared structure and behavior. Within the family Coccinellidae, species are grouped by subtle differences in body shape, spot arrangement, and internal anatomy. These distinctions may be difficult to see without magnification, yet they represent long lines of evolutionary separation shaped by habitat, climate, and available food sources. Across the world, more than 6,000 species have been described, and scientists believe many more remain undocumented. Tropical regions in particular continue to reveal new forms, often differing only slightly in color or size from known relatives. Each species occupies a narrow ecological role, fitting into local plant and insect communities in ways that reduce direct competition. Ladybugs live wherever suitable vegetation supports the insects they rely on for food. In grasslands, they move along the stems of grasses and wildflowers. In forests, they travel between shrubs and the lower branches of trees. In agricultural landscapes, they follow rows of crops, responding to changes in plant growth and insect abundance over the growing season. Urban environments also provide space for ladybugs. Gardens, parks, and even balcony planters offer shelter and food, especially where flowering plants are present. Walls, window frames, and roof edges may serve as temporary resting places, absorbing warmth during cooler hours of the day. Despite their variety, ladybugs share a similar overall form. Their rounded shape reduces exposed edges, helping conserve moisture and protect internal organs. The smooth surface of the shell allows water to run off easily and discourages debris from clinging as the insect moves through dense foliage. Not all ladybugs carry visible spots. Some species display stripes or solid colors instead. Others have spots that fade or darken slightly with age, though their basic pattern remains unchanged. These surface markings do not reflect personality or behavior, but rather the genetic instructions that guide development during the final stages of growth. Throughout these environments, ladybugs move slowly and deliberately, responding to temperature, light, and the availability of food. Their activity increases in warm conditions and decreases as temperatures drop. Over time, these individual movements combine into seasonal patterns that repeat year after year, linking small-scale behavior to larger cycles across landscapes. Ladybugs occupy a wide range of habitats because their needs are simple and closely tied to plant life. Wherever plants grow and support small plant-feeding insects, ladybugs are able to settle and remain. This connection places them in fields, hedgerows, woodland edges, orchards, and gardens, where leaves and stems create layered spaces that hold warmth, moisture, and food. In open landscapes such as meadows and grasslands, ladybugs move gradually upward through grasses as the day warms. Early in the morning, they remain low near the base of plants, where temperatures are stable. As sunlight reaches higher stems, they climb slowly, stopping often, responding to subtle changes in temperature and light intensity. These movements follow daily cycles that repeat with little variation. In forested areas, ladybugs tend to stay closer to shrubs and smaller trees rather than the high canopy. Here, leaves provide shade and protection from wind, while branches form pathways that connect one plant to another. Moisture lingers longer in these environments, supporting the insects that ladybugs feed on and extending active periods during dry seasons. Gardens create similar conditions on a smaller scale. Flowering plants, herbs, and vegetables offer varied leaf shapes and stem heights, allowing ladybugs to move vertically and horizontally within a confined space. Soil moisture and human watering patterns influence their activity, sometimes extending feeding periods beyond what would occur in nearby wild areas. The physical shape of a ladybug supports this way of life. The rounded body allows it to press close against plant surfaces, reducing exposure to air currents. The hardened shell distributes pressure evenly, protecting softer tissues as the insect moves between narrow spaces. This shape also helps regulate internal moisture, which is essential for small insects exposed to changing temperatures. Color patterns appear once the adult shell hardens. Red and orange tones are produced by pigments deposited in the outer layers, while black markings form through areas where pigment is absent. In some species, lighter colors reflect more sunlight, helping regulate body temperature during warm conditions. Darker species absorb more heat and are more active in cooler environments. These variations are not random. Over long periods of time, populations adapt to local climates through small shifts in color, size, and behavior. Species living in higher latitudes often differ slightly from those closer to the equator, even when they share a common ancestor. These gradual changes become visible only when observed across generations. Ladybugs rely on their antennae to navigate this complex environment. Each antenna contains sensory cells that detect chemical traces left by plants and other insects. As a ladybug moves, it pauses frequently, adjusting direction based on these signals. This process appears slow, but it allows efficient movement through dense vegetation without unnecessary energy use. Flight provides a way to move between patches of suitable habitat. When conditions change or food becomes scarce, ladybugs unfold their wings and lift off, traveling short distances to new plants. Most flights last only a few minutes, ending with a careful landing on a leaf or stem, where activity resumes at a measured pace. These patterns of movement create a quiet rhythm. Walking, pausing, feeding, and resting repeat throughout the day. Over weeks and months, these small actions align with seasonal changes in plant growth and temperature, forming a steady cycle that shapes the presence of ladybugs across landscapes. The outer structure of a ladybug is shaped by both protection and movement. The curved shell arches smoothly over the body, creating a firm covering that shields softer internal tissues. This shape spreads pressure evenly when the insect presses against leaves or settles into narrow spaces. It also reduces the surface area exposed to drying air, helping maintain internal moisture levels. Beneath the shell, the body is compact and efficiently arranged. Muscles that control the legs and wings are anchored to the inner surfaces of the thorax, allowing coordinated movement with minimal wasted energy. This organization supports slow, deliberate walking, as well as sudden bursts of flight when conditions shift. The smoothness of the shell plays a practical role. Water droplets slide easily off the surface after rain or dew, preventing prolonged contact that could interfere with movement or temperature regulation. Dust and plant particles are less likely to adhere, keeping sensory organs clear as the insect moves through dense vegetation. Spots and patterns appear as the shell hardens during the final stage of development. These markings are created by precise distribution of pigments rather than added layers. Once formed, they remain stable for the rest of the insect's life. In some species, spots are evenly spaced and symmetrical. In others, they vary in size or may be absent entirely. Not all ladybugs display the familiar red and black combination. Yellow, orange, brown, and black forms are common across different regions. These colors interact with sunlight in different ways. Lighter shells reflect more light and heat, while darker shells absorb warmth more readily. This affects activity levels, especially in cooler or shaded environments. Variation in appearance can occur even within a single species. Individuals raised in cooler conditions may develop darker pigmentation than those raised in warmer areas. This flexibility allows populations to adjust gradually to local climates without changing their overall structure or behavior. The head of a ladybug is small and partially tucked beneath the front edge of the shell. Large compound eyes provide a wide field of view, detecting movement and changes in light rather than fine detail. This visual system is well suited to navigating plant surfaces, where rapid responses to shadows and motion are more useful than sharp focus. Antennae extend forward from the head and move constantly as the insect walks. Each antenna carries receptors sensitive to chemical cues released by plants and other insects. These signals guide movement towards suitable feeding areas and away from less productive surfaces. Legs are jointed and end in small gripping structures that allow steady attachment to leaves and stems. This grip remains effective even on smooth or slightly wet surfaces. Movement is measured and balanced, with pauses that allow the insect to reassess its surroundings before continuing. Together, these physical features create a body well suited to a life spent moving slowly through layered plant environments. Structure, color, and motion align closely with temperature, light, and the availability of food, forming a system that operates quietly and efficiently over time. Movement in ladybugs depends on a close connection between sensory input and physical response. As they travel across a leaf or stem, their bodies remain low to the surface. This position keeps their center of mass stable and allows rapid adjustment when the texture or angle of the plant changes. Each step is placed carefully, guided by feedback from the legs and antennae. Vision plays a limited but important role. The compound eyes detect contrast, brightness, and motion rather than detailed shapes. A sudden change in light, such as a passing shadow or shifting leaf, prompts a pause. This brief stillness allows the insect to gather additional sensory information before continuing. In stable light, movement resumes at a steady pace. Antennae provide more detailed information. They sweep back and forth in slow arcs, touching surfaces and sampling chemical traces. Plants release a wide range of compounds through their leaves and stems. Ladybugs detect these signals and use them to determine whether a surface is likely to support feeding. Over time, repeated exposure allows efficient movement between productive areas. Walking remains the primary mode of travel. Flight is used sparingly because it requires a higher energy investment. When a ladybug does take flight, the transition is smooth. The shell lifts, the folded wings extend, and rapid wing beats generate lift. Most flights cover short distances, often from one plant to another nearby. Landing is controlled, with legs reaching forward to make contact before the wings fold away again. Wing movement occurs at a frequency far higher than leg movement. While walking steps are slow and deliberate, wings may beat dozens of times per second. This contrast allows quick relocation without disrupting the overall rhythm of activity. Once settled, the insect returns to walking and feeding almost immediately. Temperature strongly influences movement. At lower temperatures, muscle activity slows, and ladybugs remain still for longer periods. As warmth increases, movement becomes more frequent. This relationship creates daily cycles in activity, with peaks during mild conditions and extended rest during cold or excessive heat. Energy use is closely regulated. Ladybugs pause often, conserving energy between feeding periods. These pauses also reduce exposure to dehydration and help maintain internal balance. Over the course of a day, active movement occupies only a small portion of time, while resting and slow repositioning dominate. These patterns repeat across individuals and environments. Whether in a garden, meadow, or forest edge, the same sequence unfolds. Movement guided by sensation, short flights when needed, and long intervals of stillness create a steady pace that aligns with the surrounding environment. Energy in ladybugs moves slowly through the system that supports their daily activity. Food is gathered in small amounts and processed steadily rather than all at once. Feeding usually occurs in brief periods, followed by long intervals of stillness, allowing digestion and conserving energy. This pattern reduces strain on the body and limits unnecessary movement through exposed spaces. What ladybugs consume is closely tied to the plants they inhabit. Many species feed primarily on small plant-feeding insects that cluster along stems and leaves. These insects draw nutrients from plant sap, concentrating energy that the ladybug can then access in a compact form. By feeding on these concentrated sources, ladybugs meet their needs without traveling long distances. The act of feeding itself is slow and methodical. A ladybug approaches its food source gradually, adjusting position as it moves along the plant surface. Mouth parts are adapted for grasping and consuming small prey, allowing precise control rather than forceful action. Feeding may last several minutes, after which the insect pauses, remaining still while internal processes continue. Water enters the system through multiple pathways. Moisture clings to leaves as dew, collects after rainfall, or remains within plant tissues. Ladybugs absorb small amounts of water as they feed, and also take in droplets directly when available. This steady intake supports circulation within the body and prevents dehydration during warm periods. Once energy is absorbed, it is distributed through internal tissues to support movement, growth, and maintenance. Excess energy is stored briefly and used later when conditions are less favorable. This storage allows ladybugs to remain inactive during cooler temperatures without immediate access to food. Periods of rest are as important as periods of activity. During stillness, muscle fibers relax and internal systems stabilize. The insect often remains pressed close to a surface, reducing heat loss and exposure. These resting phases may last longer than active phases, especially during early morning or evening hours. Young ladybugs follow a similar pattern, though their feeding needs are greater relative to body size. Growth requires continuous intake of nutrients, and feeding occurs more frequently during early stages. As development progresses, feeding intervals lengthen and activity becomes more evenly spaced across the day. Over time, these individual cycles align with larger environmental rhythms. Plant growth increases food availability during warmer months, supporting higher levels of activity. As growth slows, feeding opportunities decrease, and ladybugs respond by extending rest periods. This adjustment happens gradually, without abrupt change. Movement through space becomes more limited when energy intake decreases. Walking distances shorten, flights become rare, and the insect remains within smaller areas where conditions are stable. These areas often include the undersides of leaves, dense clusters of stems, or sheltered garden corners, where temperature fluctuations are reduced. Through this balance of feeding, resting, and movement, ladybugs maintain a steady presence within their environment. Energy flows through the system in measured amounts, shaped by plant life, moisture, and temperature. Over days and weeks, this flow remains consistent, supporting survival without urgency or excess. Energy use continues to shape how ladybugs move through time. As conditions remain favorable, feeding and rest alternate in a steady rhythm that rarely changes from day to day. This consistency reduces strain on the body and allows internal systems to operate efficiently without sudden shifts in demand. As development progresses, the life cycle unfolds through a series of gradual physical changes. Eggs are placed carefully on plant surfaces, often on the underside of leaves where moisture is retained and temperature fluctuations are smaller. Each egg contains all the information required for development, and growth begins as soon as environmental conditions allow. When young insects emerge, their bodies differ greatly from the adult form. Movement is slower, and feeding is nearly continuous, driven by the demands of growth. Nutrients are converted directly into new tissue, expanding body length and mass over a relatively short time scale, measured in days rather than weeks. As growth slows, internal structures reorganize. Muscles form in more defined groups, and energy use shifts away from constant feeding toward longer intervals of stillness. This transition reflects a change from rapid expansion to preparation for a more stable adult phase. A resting stage follows, during which movement nearly stops. Inside the outer covering, tissues are reshaped and reorganized. Structures that supported early growth are broken down and reused, while adult features develop in their place. This process occurs without external movement, relying on stored energy and stable environmental conditions. When activity resumes, the adult form emerges fully formed. The shell hardens gradually, and color develops over time rather than instantly. At first, pigmentation appears pale and uneven, then deepens as chemical processes continue within the outer layers. During this period, movement remains limited, allowing the shell to strengthen. As the adult becomes more active, feeding resumes in a measured way. Energy intake now supports maintenance rather than growth, and daily rhythms become more regular. Walking and short flights alternate with extended rest, following the same patterns observed across mature individuals. Time cycles become increasingly important. Daily changes in light and temperature guide activity, while longer seasonal shifts influence movement across the landscape. In warmer months, activity periods lengthen and feeding opportunities increase. As temperatures decline, movement slows and rest dominates. Shelter becomes more important during cooler periods. Ladybugs seek spaces that retain warmth, such as dense vegetation, soil crevices, or sheltered surfaces near structures. These locations buffer against temperature extremes and reduce energy loss during prolonged stillness. Within these sheltered spaces, individuals may gather close together. This proximity helps maintain stable conditions and reduces exposure to drying air. Movement during these periods is minimal, with long stretches of inactivity punctuated by small adjustments in position. Over extended timescales, these cycles repeat with remarkable consistency. Growth, rest, movement, and shelter follow predictable patterns shaped by climate and plant life. Through repetition, the system maintains balance, allowing small organisms to persist within changing environments without urgency or excess. As time continues to pass, the adult phase settles into a stable pattern, defined more by maintenance than change. Internal processes run at a steady pace, converting food into energy needed for movement, repair, and balance. Unlike the rapid growth of earlier stages, this period is marked by consistency. Each day resembles the last, shaped by temperature, moisture, and the availability of food, rather than by internal transformation. The digestive system works continuously but quietly. Food is broken down into simpler compounds and absorbed into the body, where it supports muscle function and cellular upkeep. Waste is released in small amounts, often unnoticed, returning material to the surrounding environment, where it becomes part of the larger nutrient cycle supporting plant growth. Water remains an essential part of this system. Even in dry conditions, small amounts of moisture persist within plant tissues and shaded spaces. Ladybugs adjust their position to take advantage of these microenvironments, remaining close to surfaces that retain humidity. This behavior reduces water loss and supports stable internal conditions. As days shorten or temperatures gradually decline, activity slows further. Walking becomes less frequent, and flight is used only when necessary. Energy is conserved by limiting movement and extending periods of rest. These changes do not occur suddenly. They unfold over weeks, guided by repeated exposure to cooler mornings and shorter daylight hours. During these periods, orientation within the environment becomes more focused. Instead of moving widely across plants, ladybugs remain within confined areas that offer consistent conditions. The underside of leaves, dense clusters of stems, and sheltered garden corners provide insulation from wind and temperature fluctuations. The sensory system remains active even during extended stillness. Antennae continue to sample the immediate surroundings, detecting subtle changes in moisture or chemical signals. These inputs allow small adjustments in position without requiring full movement. A slight shift closer to a warmer surface or a more humid area can make a measurable difference in energy balance. Over longer timescales, seasonal cycles dominate behavior. In temperate regions, extended periods of cool weather lead to prolonged inactivity. Internal processes slow, and stored energy is used sparingly. The body remains functional but quiet, maintaining essential systems while avoiding unnecessary expenditure. When conditions improve, activity resumes gradually. Muscles regain strength, feeding increases, and movement becomes more frequent. This return does not happen all at once. Instead, short periods of activity alternate with rest, rebuilding energy reserves before full patterns resume. Throughout these changes, the physical structure remains unchanged. The shell continues to protect internal tissues, and color patterns remain constant. What changes is the pace of life within that structure, adjusting to external conditions without altering form. Across months and years, these cycles repeat. Individual lives follow the same general pattern, shaped by environmental cues rather than conscious choice. Through this repetition, ladybugs remain integrated within the broader system of plants, climate, and time, moving steadily through cycles that unfold without urgency. Water moves quietly through the spaces ladybugs occupy, shaping activity in subtle ways. Moisture gathers along leaf veins, settles in shallow depressions on plant surfaces, and lingers longest where air movement is limited. These small reservoirs form a network of microenvironments that support insect life even during dry periods. Dew is one of the most consistent sources of moisture. During cooler hours, water condenses from the air and spreads thinly across leaves and stems. Ladybugs often remain still during these times, positioned where droplets form naturally. As temperatures rise, the moisture evaporates slowly, providing brief access to water without requiring movement. Rain alters these conditions on a larger scale. After rainfall, plant surfaces remain damp for extended periods, especially in shaded areas. Ladybugs adjust their position to avoid direct exposure to falling drops, while remaining close to moist surfaces. The smooth outer shell allows excess water to run off easily, preventing saturation while maintaining access to humidity. Plant structure influences how long moisture remains available. Broad leaves collect and hold water differently than narrow blades of grass. Dense foliage slows evaporation by reducing airflow, creating stable zones where humidity remains higher than in surrounding open spaces. Ladybugs respond to these differences by favoring areas that offer consistent conditions. Water also moves internally through plants, drawn upward from the soil and distributed through stems and leaves. This internal flow maintains moisture within plant tissues, even when surface conditions dry. Ladybugs, feeding on insects that draw sap from plants, indirectly access this water source, linking their hydration to plant physiology. During extended dry periods, activity shifts toward times when humidity is highest. Early morning and evening become the primary windows for movement and feeding. Midday heat encourages stillness, with insects remaining pressed close to shaded surfaces where moisture loss is reduced. These adjustments are gradual and reversible. As moisture returns to the environment, movement patterns expand again. The same individuals that remained still during dry conditions resume walking and feeding without visible stress, indicating a system adapted to variation rather than constant abundance. Young stages are especially sensitive to moisture. Eggs are placed where humidity remains relatively stable, reducing the risk of drying. Early development depends on this balance, as internal water loss can disrupt growth. The careful placement of eggs reflects long-established patterns shaped by environmental pressure over many generations. As growth continues, tolerance to variation increases. Older individuals rely less on precise moisture levels, though they still favor environments that reduce dehydration. This progression allows populations to persist across a range of conditions while maintaining consistent developmental success. Across landscapes, these small-scale interactions between water, plants, and insects repeat continuously. Moisture gathers, evaporates, returns, and gathers again. Within this cycle, ladybugs move and rest, responding not to sudden change, but to slow shifts that unfold over hours, days, and seasons. This steady relationship with water supports the broader system that sustains plant and insect life together. Through quiet adjustments and repeated patterns, balance is maintained without interruption. Material continues to move through the environment even when visible activity slows. Air flows gently through plant structures, carrying heat and moisture in small amounts. Leaves warm and cool at different rates depending on their position, creating temperature gradients that remain mostly unnoticed but strongly influence insect behavior. Ladybugs respond to these gradients by shifting position rather than location. A few centimeters closer to a stem or slightly beneath a leaf can place the body in a zone where temperature and humidity are more stable. These micro-adjustments reduce energy loss and limit the need for movement across exposed surfaces. Plant surfaces themselves change throughout the day. As sunlight moves, some areas dry while others remain shaded. The texture of a leaf affects how heat is absorbed and released. Smooth surfaces cool quickly, while textured surfaces retain warmth longer. Ladybugs remain in contact with these surfaces, using direct physical contact to moderate body temperature. Internal balance depends on maintaining narrow ranges of temperature and moisture. Enzymatic processes that support digestion and movement operate most efficiently within these limits. When conditions drift outside this range, activity slows automatically. This response protects internal systems without requiring active regulation. Over time, repeated exposure to the same conditions reinforces predictable patterns. Ladybugs become active at similar times each day, pause in similar locations, and follow familiar paths across plants. These routines are not fixed, but emerge naturally from interaction with the environment. Coexistence with other small organisms adds further stability. Multiple insect species occupy the same plant structures without constant interaction. Each moves at a different pace and occupies slightly different positions, reducing overlap. Ladybugs pass through these shared spaces quietly, rarely altering the behavior of others. As days accumulate, these interactions form a steady background. Feeding, resting, and repositioning continue without urgency. Even when conditions shift gradually, responses remain proportional. Small changes lead to small adjustments, preserving balance across the system. This continuity extends across seasons. Although activity levels rise and fall, the underlying relationship between insect, plant, air, and moisture remains consistent. The same processes repeat with slight variation, shaped by longer cycles of light and temperature. Through this repetition, the environment becomes predictable, not because it remains unchanged, but because change occurs slowly enough to be absorbed without disruption. Ladybugs remain present within this flow, neither dominating nor withdrawing, but maintaining a quiet, stable role. Time continues to shape the environment in small, consistent ways. Surfaces warm and cool, moisture gathers and disperses, and air moves gently through layers of leaves and stems. These shifts occur gradually enough that they do not interrupt ongoing activity. Instead, they guide it, setting quiet limits within which movement remains efficient. Ladybugs remain closely attuned to these conditions through direct contact with their surroundings. The body stays aligned with plant surfaces, maintaining a steady exchange of heat and moisture. When conditions drift slightly, posture changes first. A subtle turn, a short repositioning, or a pause in motion allows balance to return without effort. Internal systems mirror this steadiness. Circulation, digestion, and muscle function continue at a measured pace, supported by regular intake of energy and water. Nothing accelerates suddenly. Nothing stops abruptly. Processes slow or quicken only in response to sustained environmental change. Over extended periods, familiarity develops between insect and environment. Certain leaves are returned to repeatedly. Specific sheltered areas provide reliable conditions. These locations become part of a stable pattern that requires little adjustment once established. This stability supports longevity. By avoiding extremes and maintaining narrow operating ranges, stress on the body is reduced. Repair processes occur continuously, addressing minor wear before it accumulates. Over time, this quiet maintenance allows individuals to remain active across many seasonal cycles. Even as individual lives progress toward their natural limits, the surrounding system remains unchanged. new individuals emerge into the same patterns, occupying the same spaces, responding to the same signals. The system does not depend on any single presence. It continues through replacement rather than interruption. Across this environment, the combined effect is one of continuity. Small movements repeat. Conditions fluctuate within familiar bounds. Life proceeds without urgency, guided by gradual change rather than sudden events. Within this flow, ladybugs remain integrated, shaped by the same physical processes that govern plants, air, and water. Their presence reflects balance rather than disruption, persistence rather than motion, and steady adaptation to time. Activity settles into long periods of consistency once growth has ended. The adult body no longer changes in shape or size, and internal processes focus on maintenance rather than development. Energy intake supports movement, repair, and balance, while excess is limited. This restraint keeps internal systems operating within narrow ranges that reduce strain over time. Plant surfaces continue to define daily pathways. Leaves provide both structure and shelter, creating layered spaces that moderate temperature and moisture. Ladybugs move slowly across these surfaces, following edges, veins, and junctions where stability is greatest. Each pause allows sensory information to be gathered before movement resumes. Other small organisms share these same spaces. Insects of different sizes and functions occupy nearby positions without frequent contact. Each species follows its own rhythm, shaped by similar environmental cues but expressed differently. Ladybugs pass through these shared areas quietly, rarely altering the behavior of others. Feeding remains selective and measured. Rather than constant intake, small amounts are consumed at intervals that align with energy needs. This spacing prevents overload and allows internal systems to process nutrients efficiently. After feeding, stillness dominates while digestion continues. Over weeks, repeated use of the same plants creates familiarity. Paths become consistent, and preferred resting places remain unchanged unless conditions shift. This repetition reduces the need for exploration, conserving energy and limiting exposure to less stable areas. Seasonal change introduces gradual variation. As temperatures rise, activity expands slightly, extending movement into earlier and later hours. When temperatures fall, activity contracts, concentrating movement into shorter periods. These adjustments are subtle and occur without disruption. Shelter remains essential during prolonged cooler conditions. Dense vegetation, protected surfaces, and enclosed spaces offer insulation from temperature extremes. Ladybugs remain within these areas for extended periods, adjusting position only when necessary to maintain balance. Throughout these cycles, internal repair continues. Minor damage to tissues is addressed continuously, preventing accumulation. This ongoing maintenance supports long functional lifespans relative to body size, allowing individuals to persist through multiple seasonal shifts. Across the environment, these patterns repeat across individuals and generations. The system remains stable not because it is static, but because change unfolds slowly enough to be absorbed. Within this steady flow, ladybugs continue their presence, integrated quietly into the surrounding landscape. As seasons progress, the surrounding environment continues to provide a stable framework within which activity unfolds. Light shifts across plant surfaces at predictable angles, warming some areas while leaving others shaded. These patterns repeat daily, guiding movement without the need for exploration. Ladybugs remain within zones that offer balance, adjusting position in response to gradual change rather than sudden cues. Temperature influences muscle efficiency and timing. In moderate warmth, movement becomes slightly more frequent, though still steady. In cooler conditions, stillness dominates. These responses are automatic, shaped by physical limits rather than choice. Over time, the body settles into a pace that matches external conditions closely, avoiding unnecessary exertion. Food availability follows similar rhythms. As plant growth fluctuates, the insects that rely on that growth adjust in number and position. Ladybugs respond by shifting feeding locations slightly, remaining within the same general area while following small changes in distribution. This keeps movement local and energy costs low. Periods of rest lengthen as activity decreases. During stillness, posture remains compact, with the body held close to the surface beneath. This contact stabilizes temperature and limits moisture loss. Even during extended inactivity, sensory systems remain alert, allowing small adjustments when conditions drift. Over longer spans of time, these repeated behaviors create continuity. Individual days blend into one another, linked by familiar patterns of light, warmth, and shelter. Change remains present, but unfolds slowly enough to preserve balance. As individuals age, activity does not cease abruptly. Instead, movement becomes less frequent and more conservative. Feeding continues in smaller amounts, sufficient to maintain essential functions. Internal repair processes remain active, addressing wear as it occurs, rather than allowing accumulation. Within the broader environment, this gradual slowing is absorbed without disruption. Other organisms continue their cycles, plants grow and decline, and seasonal shifts proceed as before. Individual presence fades quietly, replaced by others emerging into the same stable patterns. Through this ongoing replacement, the system maintains continuity. The environment does not rely on constant activity, but on repeated processes unfolding at measured pace. Ladybugs remain part of this flow, shaped by time, temperature, and structure rather than urgency or force. Across days and seasons, the rhythm persists, steady and unbroken, guided by physical conditions that change slowly and predictably. As the environment continues to cycle, long periods of quiet stability become the dominant feature. Plant structures remain largely unchanged from day to day, offering consistent surfaces for movement and rest. Leaves age gradually, stems thicken or dry, and new growth appears at a measured pace. Ladybugs adjust to these changes without altering their overall pattern of behavior. Moisture continues to move through the system in small amounts. Even when rainfall is absent, humidity persists within sheltered spaces. Soil releases water slowly, plants draw it upward, and evaporation redistributes it through the air. These processes maintain a background level of moisture that supports insect life without requiring constant access to free water. During extended periods of mild conditions, activity remains evenly spaced. Feeding, walking, and resting alternate in a predictable order. The duration of each phase changes slightly with temperature, but the sequence remains the same. This regularity reduces stress on internal systems and supports long-term balance. As time passes, interaction with the surrounding environment becomes increasingly efficient. Movement follows familiar paths, and pauses occur at known stable points. These habits reduce exposure to less favorable conditions and limit unnecessary energy use. Over weeks and months, this efficiency supports persistence rather than expansion. Seasonal transitions introduce gradual shifts in plant structure. Leaves may thicken, thin, or fall, altering available surfaces. Ladybugs respond by relocating short distances to maintain contact with suitable structures. These relocations occur incrementally, following the changing form of the environment rather than anticipating it. Temperature continues to act as a regulating force. When warmth is abundant, internal processes operate comfortably within their optimal range. When cooler conditions dominate, processes slow proportionally. This automatic adjustment preserves function without requiring compensatory behavior. Over long spans of time, the accumulation of small adjustments defines the life experience. No single change dominates. Instead, countless minor shifts combine to shape activity and rest. This accumulation is gradual enough that balance is maintained throughout. Within this steady flow, the environment supports continuity. Individuals occupy familiar roles, then fade, while new individuals emerge into the same conditions. The structure of the system remains intact, governed by slow physical processes rather than sudden events. Through repetition and gradual change, stability persists. Movement remains measured, energy use remains efficient, and presence remains integrated within the broader landscape. The system continues, shaped by time and material flow rather than urgency or disruption. As time continues to pass, the environment remains shaped by slow and predictable forces. Plant growth proceeds incrementally, guided by light, temperature, and water availability. New leaves form, while older ones age and change texture. These shifts alter the surfaces available for movement, yet the overall structure remains familiar. Ladybugs adapt to these changes through small adjustments rather than relocation. When a leaf becomes less suitable, nearby stems or neighboring plants offer alternatives within close range. Movement between these options is brief and deliberate, maintaining contact with stable surfaces throughout. The presence of other insects contributes to a layered system. Different species occupy distinct zones on the same plant, separated by height, surface texture, or feeding preference. Ladybugs move among these zones quietly, their activity blending into the background of constant low-level motion that defines living plant systems. Air circulation continues to influence conditions at a fine scale. Gentle currents carry heat and moisture through clusters of leaves, creating pockets of warmth or cooling that shift throughout the day. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, positioning themselves where conditions remain moderate. Internal balance depends on this alignment with external conditions. Metabolic processes proceed efficiently when temperature and hydration remain within narrow limits. By limiting movement and maintaining close contact with surfaces, energy expenditure remains low and consistent. Feeding continues to occur intermittently. The timing of these periods aligns with optimal conditions, often following slight increases in warmth or humidity. After feeding, stillness allows digestion to proceed without interference. This alternation between activity and rest remains stable over long periods. As weeks pass, repetition reinforces efficiency. Familiar routes and resting points reduce decision-making and unnecessary exploration. This consistency supports long-term persistence within a limited area, allowing individuals to remain integrated within a stable microenvironment. Seasonal progression introduces broader shifts without disrupting local patterns. As plant growth slows or accelerates, available surfaces change gradually. Ladybugs respond by adjusting vertical position or orientation, remaining within the same general space while tracking favorable conditions. Through these interactions, the system maintains balance. No single element dominates. Plants, insects, air, and moisture influence one another continuously, shaping conditions that support steady presence rather than constant change. Within this framework, ladybugs continue their quiet activity, moving and resting in accordance with physical conditions that unfold slowly. Their persistence reflects adaptation to gradual change, sustained through alignment with the surrounding environment over time. As the environment continues to cycle, long-established patterns remain in place. Light reaches plant surfaces at slightly different angles as days progress, warming some areas earlier, while leaving others cool for longer. These differences guide movement subtly, encouraging activity where conditions are most stable. Plant tissues respond to these changes by adjusting water content and flexibility. Leaves become firmer or softer depending on moisture levels, altering how they support small bodies. Ladybugs remain responsive to these shifts, favoring surfaces that provide steady contact and reliable grip. Over time, the repeated use of certain plants creates a form of continuity. The same stems and leaves are revisited, not because they are chosen deliberately, but because they consistently meet physical needs. This repetition reduces exposure to less favorable conditions and supports efficient energy use. Within these spaces, other organisms follow parallel routines. Small insects feed, rest, and move according to their own cycles, shaped by the same environmental signals. Ladybugs pass among them without disturbance, their movements forming part of a shared background rhythm. Temperature continues to regulate internal activity. When warmth is moderate, muscle movement remains smooth and controlled. When temperatures drop, movement slows automatically. These responses occur without delay, reflecting direct physical limits rather than behavioral change. Feeding remains distributed across time rather than concentrated. Small amounts are taken as needed, followed by extended periods of rest. This spacing allows digestion and internal balance to proceed steadily, avoiding fluctuations that would require compensation. As months pass, these patterns reinforce stability. Individual variation remains small, with most behavior shaped by shared conditions rather than personal history. This uniformity allows populations to persist without reliance on constant adaptation. Environmental change continues at a measured pace. Plant growth advances or recedes gradually. Moisture levels fluctuate within predictable ranges, and air movement shifts gently. Ladybugs remain aligned with these processes, adjusting position and activity in proportion to change. Through this alignment, the system maintains continuity. Activity remains calm, movement remains efficient, and presence remains integrated within the surrounding landscape. Over time, this balance persists, shaped by slow physical processes that unfold steadily across days and seasons. As time extends further, the relationship between the insects and their surroundings becomes increasingly defined by repetition. Plant structures remain the primary framework, offering surfaces that change slowly enough to remain dependable. Veins thicken, edges curl slightly, and textures shift. Yet these alterations occur gradually, allowing continued use without interruption. Ladybugs remain close to these surfaces, adjusting posture more often than location. A slight turn of the body or a brief repositioning restores balance when conditions drift. These movements are minimal, conserving energy while maintaining alignment with temperature and moisture levels. Air continues to move gently through plant layers, carrying heat and water vapor in small amounts. These currents rarely draw attention, yet they shape conditions at a fine scale. A sheltered underside of a leaf may remain cooler and more humid, while an exposed edge warms quickly. Ladybugs respond by occupying the zones that offer stability. Internal systems remain steady under these conditions. Muscle activity, digestion, and circulation operate within narrow limits that reduce strain. When conditions remain favorable, activity proceeds smoothly. When conditions shift, slowing occurs automatically, preventing excess expenditure. Feeding patterns continue to follow environmental cues. Availability changes subtly as plant growth alters the distribution of other small insects. Ladybugs respond by adjusting position within the same general area, maintaining local movement rather than relocating. Rest occupies much of the daily cycle. During these periods, the body remains compact and still, pressed close to a supporting surface. This posture limits moisture loss and stabilizes temperature, supporting internal balance over extended periods. As weeks turn into months, these patterns repeat without deviation. No single day stands apart. Instead, continuity emerges through repetition. Activity blends into rest, movement into stillness, and change into familiarity. Across generations, this repetition sustains presence. While individuals are replaced, the overall pattern remains unchanged. New life enters the same framework, shaped by the same physical forces and guided by the same gradual processes. Through this continuity, the system persists. Plants, air, water, and small organisms remain linked through slow exchange and measured adjustment. Ladybugs continue within this flow, neither accelerating nor withdrawing, but remaining present through steady alignment with the environment over time. Across longer spans of time, the surrounding environment continues to operate within familiar limits. Soil retains moisture at depth, releasing it upward through plant roots at a steady rate. Leaves respond by maintaining internal pressure, keeping surfaces firm enough to support movement. These processes remain mostly invisible, yet they define the conditions experienced at the surface. Ladybugs remain dependent on this stability. By staying close to plant structures, they benefit from moderated temperatures and reduced exposure. The body remains aligned with these surfaces, allowing heat and moisture exchange to occur gradually rather than abruptly. This contact supports internal balance without requiring active regulation. As plants age, surface characteristics shift subtly. Waxes thicken, textures become slightly rougher, and edges curl or soften. Ladybugs adjust to these changes through posture rather than relocation, maintaining grip and balance as surfaces evolve. This adaptability allows continued use of familiar structures over extended periods. Air movement continues to influence conditions at a fine scale. Even slight currents alter evaporation rates, cooling some areas while leaving others unchanged. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these differences, favoring positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain stable. Feeding remains spaced across time. Rather than seeking constant intake, small amounts are consumed as needed, followed by long intervals of stillness. This pattern allows internal systems to process nutrients efficiently and reduces energy demands associated with movement. During prolonged mild conditions, daily rhythms remain consistent. Activity occurs during similar windows, rest fills the remaining hours, and transitions between the two remain gradual. This predictability supports internal processes that rely on steady input rather than fluctuation. Over months, the accumulation of small adjustments shapes overall presence. No single movement or pause defines the pattern. Instead, persistence emerges from countless minor responses to temperature, moisture, and surface condition. As individuals reach the later stages of life, activity slows further. Movement becomes less frequent, and rest occupies most of the day. Feeding continues in reduced amounts, sufficient to support essential functions. Internal repair processes remain active, addressing wear as it arises. Within the broader system, this gradual slowing blends seamlessly into continuity. Other individuals occupy the same spaces, follow the same paths, and respond to the same cues. The environment remains unchanged by individual transitions. Through this ongoing cycle of use, rest, and replacement, stability is maintained. The system continues, shaped by slow physical processes that unfold over time, with ladybugs remaining integrated within the steady flow of their surroundings. Seasonal progression continues to influence conditions without abrupt change. Day length alters gradually, shifting the balance of light and shade across plant surfaces. These changes affect temperature patterns, extending periods of warmth or coolness by small increments. Ladybugs respond by adjusting timing rather than behavior, remaining active during favorable windows and resting when conditions drift beyond comfort. Plant growth follows similar rhythms. New leaves emerge slowly, while older ones thicken or dry. This turnover reshapes available surfaces, but does not remove them entirely. Ladybugs remain within the same general area, transferring activity to nearby structures as needed. Movement remains local, conserving energy and maintaining familiarity with the environment. Moisture availability continues to fluctuate within narrow ranges. Even during drier periods, shaded areas retain humidity, supported by soil water and plant transpiration. Ladybugs favor these zones, maintaining close contact with surfaces that limit moisture loss and stabilize internal conditions. Internal processes adjust in parallel. Metabolic activity slows when external conditions cool and increases slightly when warmth returns. These shifts are proportional and reversible, preventing stress on tissues and maintaining balance over long periods. Feeding patterns remain intermittent. Small amounts of food support maintenance rather than growth, and extended rest allows digestion to proceed efficiently. This balance reduces the need for frequent movement and limits exposure to variable conditions. Over extended spans of time, repetition becomes the defining feature. Days follow similar sequences, and weeks blend together without sharp distinction. This continuity supports persistence within a stable framework, shaped by physical conditions rather than behavioral change. As individuals age, their presence becomes quieter. Movement is limited to short adjustments, and rest dominates daily activity. Feeding continues at a reduced pace, sufficient to maintain essential functions. Internal repair processes remain active, addressing gradual wear without accumulation. Within the broader environment, this transition is absorbed without disruption. New individuals emerge into the same conditions, occupy the same surfaces, and follow the same rhythms. The system remains intact, sustained through replacement rather than constant adaptation. Through these ongoing cycles, balance persists. Ladybugs remain integrated within a landscape shaped by light, moisture, and time, moving and resting in alignment with slow processes that continue steadily across seasons. As the system continues, attention remains focused on the shared space where plants, insects, air, and moisture intersect. Leaves form overlapping layers that soften light and slow air movement. Within these layers, temperature remains more stable than in open surroundings. Ladybugs remain positioned where these effects are strongest, maintaining contact with surfaces that buffer change. Plant chemistry continues to influence conditions at a fine scale. Compounds released through leaves and stems shape the distribution of other small insects. These shifts occur gradually, altering feeding opportunities without sudden scarcity. Ladybugs adjust by moving short distances along the same plants, following subtle changes in availability rather than seeking new locations. Movement remains economical. Walking dominates, with steps placed deliberately and pauses inserted frequently. Each pause allows sensory input to confirm that conditions remain suitable. When they do, movement resumes without acceleration. When they do not, stillness extends until balance returns. Air temperature continues to regulate internal processes. Enzymatic activity responds directly to warmth, increasing efficiency within a narrow range and slowing outside it. This automatic response keeps energy use proportional to environmental support. No excess is stored beyond what is needed for short periods of reduced activity. Moisture exchange remains constant but understated. Contact with plant surfaces allows slow transfer of water vapor, reducing dehydration. Even in dry air, shaded zones maintain enough humidity to support internal balance. Ladybugs remain aligned with these zones, reducing exposure through position rather than avoidance. As weeks pass, the environment presents fewer surprises. Conditions vary, but within familiar limits. This predictability supports steady presence, allowing individuals to persist without frequent adjustment. Movement, feeding, and rest continue to alternate in a stable pattern. Within this framework, individual variation remains small. Behavior reflects physical conditions more than age or history. Each presence follows the same underlying rhythm, shaped by light, moisture, and surface structure. Through this ongoing alignment, the system maintains continuity. Change remains present, but absorbed gradually. Ladybugs continue to move and rest within this flow, integrated quietly into an environment governed by slow physical processes unfolding over time. Time continues to pass without sharp distinction between one period and the next. The surrounding environment remains shaped by gradual forces that operate continuously. Light shifts, moisture moves, and plant tissues respond at a measured pace. These processes define the conditions under which activity remains possible, setting limits that are rarely exceeded. Ladybugs remain closely associated with these conditions through direct contact with their surroundings. The body stays pressed against plant surfaces, allowing heat and moisture to exchange slowly. This contact reduces exposure to rapid change and supports internal balance without the need for frequent movement. As plant structures evolve, their surfaces offer varying textures and firmness. Some leaves thicken and stiffen, while others soften as they age. Ladybugs adjust their position accordingly, favoring areas that provide reliable grip and stable support. These adjustments occur incrementally, guided by physical feedback rather than exploration. Feeding opportunities continue to follow plant chemistry and growth. Small insects remain distributed along stems and leaves in patterns shaped by sap flow and nutrient availability. Ladybugs respond by shifting feeding locations within the same area, maintaining a local range that limits energy expenditure. Periods of rest continue to dominate the daily cycle. During stillness, internal systems operate efficiently, processing nutrients and maintaining tissues. Muscle activity remains low, conserving energy and reducing wear. This balance supports extended presence within a limited space. Air movement remains gentle within dense vegetation. Even slight changes in airflow alter evaporation and temperature at the surface. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these differences, occupying positions where conditions remain moderate and predictable. As days accumulate, familiarity with the environment deepens. The same surfaces are used repeatedly, and movement patterns remain consistent. This repetition reduces variability and supports persistence across time. Through this steady alignment with physical conditions, the system remains stable. Change unfolds slowly, allowing continuous adjustment without disruption. Ladybugs continue their presence within this flow, shaped by gradual processes that operate quietly across the environment. As the cycle continues, the environment maintains its quiet consistency. Plant surfaces remain the primary interface through which temperature and moisture are moderated. Leaves absorb warmth during daylight hours and release it slowly as conditions cool. This gradual exchange softens extremes and creates zones where internal balance can be maintained with minimal effort. Ladybugs remain within these moderated spaces, adjusting orientation rather than location. A slight shift along a vein or closer to a stem alters exposure enough to restore comfort. These movements are brief and infrequent, preserving energy and maintaining continuity. Plant chemistry continues to influence the distribution of other small insects. As sap flow changes with temperature and moisture, feeding insects relocate along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these shifts locally, remaining within the same plant while adjusting position to maintain access to food. Internal systems respond smoothly to these external cues. Digestion proceeds at a steady pace, circulation distributes nutrients efficiently, and muscle activity remains restrained. When conditions are stable, internal processes operate near optimal levels without acceleration. Moisture remains present even during extended dry periods. Shaded plant layers retain humidity, and contact with these surfaces limits water loss. Ladybugs maintain close alignment with these zones, using position to manage hydration rather than increasing intake. Rest continues to occupy most of the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, reducing surface exposure and stabilizing temperature. Sensory systems remain active, allowing subtle adjustments without full movement. As time passes, repetition reinforces predictability. Movement paths, feeding locations, and resting points remain consistent. This familiarity reduces variability and supports long-term presence within a confined area. Across the environment, similar patterns unfold simultaneously. Plants, insects, air, and moisture interact continuously, shaping conditions that remain within familiar limits. Ladybugs persist within this system, moving and resting in response to gradual change rather than abrupt events. Through this steady interaction, continuity is maintained. The system remains balanced, governed by slow physical processes that unfold quietly over time, supporting presence without urgency or disruption. Across longer stretches of time, the surrounding system continues to operate through accumulation rather than interruption. Light continues its daily arc. Moisture cycles between soil, plant, and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. These forces do not demand immediate response. Instead, they define a narrow range within which activity remains possible and efficient. Ladybugs remain aligned with these limits through small, repeated adjustments. The body stays close to supporting surfaces, allowing slow exchange of heat and moisture. When conditions drift, a brief repositioning restores balance. These corrections are subtle, conserving energy while maintaining internal stability. Plant growth continues to reshape available surfaces without altering the overall framework. New leaves appear, older ones age, and stems thicken slightly. Ladybugs move between these structures as needed, favoring continuity over novelty. Movement remains local, measured, and infrequent. Feeding remains integrated into this pattern. Availability changes slowly as plant chemistry and growth influence the distribution of other small insects. Ladybugs respond by adjusting position within the same area, maintaining access without extended travel. Intake remains modest and spaced across time. Periods of rest continue to dominate daily activity. During stillness, internal processes proceed efficiently. Digestion, circulation, and tissue maintenance occur without strain. Muscle activity remains low, reducing wear and preserving function across extended spans. Airflow within dense vegetation remains gentle. Even small differences in movement alter evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, selecting positions where conditions remain moderate and predictable. As weeks pass, repetition reinforces stability. Familiar paths and resting points reduce exposure to less favorable conditions. This consistency supports persistence without the need for adaptation or expansion. Through these ongoing interactions, the system remains balanced. Change continues, but at a pace that allows continuous alignment. Ladybugs remain integrated within this flow, shaped by slow physical processes that unfold steadily across time and environment. As the environment continues to unfold, the relationship between structure and movement remains unchanged. Plant surfaces continue to offer layered support, moderating temperature and moisture through their form and density. Light filters through these layers unevenly, creating zones that warm and cool at different rates. Ladybugs remain within the range of these effects, shifting position to maintain balance. Internal processes remain closely tied to these external conditions. When warmth and humidity align, movement resumes gently. When either drifts, stillness follows. These responses are proportional, allowing the body to remain within stable operating limits without exertion. Plant chemistry continues to guide the distribution of feeding opportunities. Changes in sap flow alter where small insects gather along stems and leaves. Ladybugs respond by adjusting position within familiar structures, remaining local while maintaining access. This approach limits energy use and exposure. Rest remains the dominant state. During these periods, posture stays compact and contact with surfaces remains constant. Heat loss slows, moisture exchange stabilizes, and internal systems operate efficiently. Sensory awareness persists, allowing minor adjustments when needed. As time accumulates, the environment becomes increasingly predictable. Conditions fluctuate within known boundaries, and responses remain consistent. This predictability supports persistence rather than change, allowing presence to continue without disruption. Across the landscape, similar processes unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles, and air moves gently. Ladybugs remain integrated within this flow, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that continue steadily over time. Time continues to shape conditions through steady repetition. Light follows familiar paths across plant surfaces, warming some areas while leaving others shaded. These patterns shift gradually over weeks rather than hours, allowing activity to remain aligned without interruption. Ladybugs remain positioned where these effects overlap. The body stays close to surfaces that buffer temperature change, maintaining contact that supports internal balance. When warmth increases, brief periods of movement follow. When it recedes, stillness returns. These adjustments require no transition, unfolding smoothly within the same space. Plant structures continue to change slowly. Leaves thicken, edges curl, and surfaces develop subtle variations in texture. Ladybugs adapt through posture rather than relocation, maintaining grip and stability as surfaces evolve. This adaptability allows continued use of familiar structures across extended periods. Feeding opportunities remain tied to these same structures. As plant chemistry shifts with moisture and temperature, the distribution of small insects changes incrementally. Ladybugs respond by adjusting position within the same plant, maintaining access without extending their range. Internal processes mirror this steadiness. Digestion proceeds at a measured pace. Circulation distributes nutrients efficiently, and muscle activity remains restrained. When conditions remain favorable, these systems operate near optimal levels. When conditions drift, activity slows proportionally. Rest continues to dominate the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Sensory systems remain active, allowing subtle corrections when necessary. These corrections occur without urgency, preserving continuity. As days blend into weeks, repetition reinforces stability. Familiar movement paths and resting points remain unchanged unless conditions require adjustment. This consistency reduces variability and supports long-term presence within a confined area. Across this environment, similar patterns persist. Plants, insects, air, and moisture interact continuously, shaping conditions that remain within predictable limits. Ladybugs continue within this flow, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that unfold quietly over time. The system continues without emphasis, shaped by the same steady interactions that have persisted throughout. Plant surfaces remain layered and interconnected, forming a quiet framework that moderates light, temperature, and moisture. These surfaces continue to absorb warmth during daylight hours and release it slowly, smoothing transitions and limiting extremes. Ladybugs remain aligned with these moderated zones. Contact with leaves and stems allows gradual exchange of heat and moisture, supporting internal balance without effort. When conditions shift, posture changes first, followed by brief repositioning if needed. These movements are small and infrequent, preserving energy while maintaining stability. Plant chemistry continues to influence the distribution of other small insects. As sap flow adjusts with moisture and temperature, feeding insects relocate subtly along stems and leaves. Ladybugs respond by adjusting position within the same plant, maintaining access without expanding their range. This local movement supports efficiency, and reduces exposure. Internal systems remain steady. Digestion proceeds at a measured pace, circulation distributes nutrients evenly, and muscle activity remains restrained. When external conditions are favorable, activity increases slightly. When conditions drift, stillness returns. These adjustments remain proportional and reversible. Moisture continues to circulate through soil, plant, and air. Even in periods without rainfall, shaded areas retain humidity. Ladybugs remain close to these zones, using position to manage hydration rather than increasing intake. This strategy supports internal balance over extended periods. Rest continues to dominate daily activity. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting surface exposure and conserving energy. Sensory systems remain active, allowing subtle corrections when necessary. These corrections occur without urgency, maintaining continuity. As time passes, repetition reinforces predictability. Movement paths, feeding locations, and resting points remain familiar. This familiarity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined area. Across the environment, similar processes unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles, and air moves gently. Ladybugs remain integrated within this flow, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that continue steadily across time. Over extended periods, the surrounding environment continues to offer a stable framework shaped by slow exchange rather than rapid change. Soil retains moisture at depth and releases it upward through plant roots in steady amounts. Leaves respond by maintaining internal pressure, keeping surfaces firm enough to support movement while remaining flexible enough to adapt to temperature shifts. Ladybugs remain dependent on this stability. By staying close to plant structures, they benefit from moderated conditions that limit extremes. Heat moves gradually between body and surface, while moisture exchange remains balanced. This close contact supports internal regulation without requiring active movement. Plant surfaces continue to evolve slowly. Waxes thicken, textures become more pronounced, and edges soften or curl. Ladybugs respond through posture, maintaining grip and balance as these changes occur. This adaptability allows continued use of familiar structures across long spans of time. Feeding opportunities continue to shift subtly. As plant chemistry responds to moisture and light, small insects adjust their position along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same general area while maintaining access to food. Intake remains modest and spaced across time. Rest continues to occupy most of the daily cycle. During stillness, internal systems operate efficiently, processing nutrients and supporting tissue maintenance. Muscle activity remains low, reducing wear and preserving function over extended periods. Air movement within dense vegetation remains gentle. Even slight differences alter evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, favoring positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain consistent. As weeks accumulate, repetition reinforces continuity. Familiar surfaces are revisited, and movement patterns remain unchanged unless conditions require adjustment. This consistency supports persistence without the need for expansion or adaptation. Through these ongoing interactions, the system remains balanced. Change unfolds gradually, allowing continuous alignment with physical conditions. Ladybugs remain integrated within this flow, shaped by slow processes that operate quietly across the environment and through time. As time passes, the environment remains governed by the same gradual exchanges. Light, moisture, and temperature shift within narrow limits, creating conditions that remain predictable over long spans. Plant surfaces continue to absorb and release energy slowly, buffering the effects of daily and seasonal variation. Ladybugs remain positioned where these buffering effects are strongest. Contact with leaves and stems allows heat to move steadily between body and surface. Moisture exchange remains balanced, preventing loss during dry periods and excess during humid ones. These steady interactions support internal stability without requiring frequent movement. Plant chemistry continues to guide the distribution of feeding opportunities. Changes in sap flow influence where small insects gather, but these shifts occur incrementally. Ladybugs respond by adjusting position within familiar structures, maintaining access while conserving energy. Internal processes remain efficient under these conditions. Digestion proceeds at a measured pace, circulation distributes nutrients evenly, and muscle activity remains restrained. When external conditions remain favorable, activity continues smoothly. When they drift, stillness follows naturally. Rest continues to dominate the daily cycle. During these periods, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Sensory awareness persists, allowing subtle corrections when conditions change slightly. These corrections occur without urgency, preserving continuity. As weeks blend into months, repetition strengthens predictability. Movement paths and resting points remain consistent, reducing variability and supporting persistence within a limited area. This familiarity reduces the need for exploration and limits exposure to less stable conditions. Across the environment, similar patterns unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles through soil and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this flow, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that continue steadily over time. Through this sustained alignment, balance is maintained. Change remains present, but unfolds slowly enough to be absorbed without disruption. Ladybugs continue their quiet presence within a system shaped by steady material exchange and time. Across the landscape, the same physical relationships continue to hold. Plant structures remain anchored in place, responding to light and moisture through slow internal adjustments. Leaves maintain internal pressure through steady water movement, preserving shape and firmness even as external conditions fluctuate. These properties provide reliable surfaces that change only incrementally. Ladybugs remain closely associated with these stable features. Contact with plant surfaces allows gradual exchange of heat, preventing rapid loss or gain. Moisture transfer remains controlled, limiting dehydration during dry air and excess during periods of higher humidity. This balance supports internal systems without requiring constant repositioning. Air continues to circulate gently through vegetation. Even minor differences in airflow influence evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs respond by occupying positions where movement of air is reduced, favoring areas that retain consistent conditions. These choices are expressed through position rather than relocation, maintaining continuity within a confined space. Feeding remains integrated into this stable framework. Availability shifts slowly as plant chemistry and growth influence the distribution of other small insects. Ladybugs adjust their position within the same plant structures, maintaining access without extending their range. Intake remains measured, supporting maintenance rather than change. Rest continues to occupy much of the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, reducing exposure and conserving energy. Internal processes continue uninterrupted, addressing minor wear and maintaining function. Sensory systems remain active, allowing subtle adjustments when conditions drift. As time accumulates, repetition reinforces efficiency. Familiar surfaces are revisited, and movement patterns remain consistent. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence across extended periods. Seasonal progression introduces broader shifts without altering the underlying framework. Light angles change, temperatures adjust, and moisture availability varies within predictable bounds. Ladybugs remain aligned with these changes, modifying timing and position rather than behavior. Through these sustained interactions, the system remains balanced. Plants, air, moisture, and insects continue to influence one another through slow exchange. Ladybugs persist within this flow, maintaining presence through steady alignment with physical conditions that unfold quietly over time. As the cycle continues, the surrounding environment remains defined by gradual change rather than interruption. Plant tissues continue to regulate internal water movement, drawing moisture from the soil and distributing it upward through stems and leaves. This slow circulation maintains firmness and flexibility at the surface, creating conditions that remain supportive over long periods. Ladybugs remain closely connected to these surfaces. By maintaining contact, they experience moderated temperatures and stable moisture levels. Heat transfer occurs slowly, preventing sudden shifts that would require rapid response. This alignment allows internal systems to remain balanced with minimal movement. The structure of vegetation continues to shape local conditions. Dense clusters of leaves slow air movement, reducing evaporation and temperature fluctuation. Open areas warm and cool more quickly. Ladybugs remain within the buffered zones, adjusting position by small amounts to maintain comfort without leaving familiar spaces. Feeding opportunities continue to follow plant chemistry and growth patterns. Small insects redistribute gradually as sap flow and nutrient availability change. Ladybugs respond by shifting along the same stems and leaves, maintaining access while conserving energy. Intake remains modest and evenly spaced across time. Rest continues to dominate daily activity. During stillness, the body remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Internal processes proceed at a steady pace, supporting maintenance and repair. Sensory awareness remains present, allowing subtle adjustments when conditions drift. As days blend into weeks, repetition strengthens predictability. Familiar surfaces are revisited, and movement paths remain unchanged unless conditions require adjustment. This consistency supports persistence within a limited area, reducing exposure to less stable environments. Across the broader landscape, similar processes unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles between soil, plant, and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this system, responding proportionally to change rather than reacting to individual events. Through this sustained alignment, balance is maintained. Change continues, but at a pace that allows continuous adjustment without disruption. Ladybugs persist quietly within a system shaped by slow material exchange and the steady passage of time. As time extends further, the surrounding system remains governed by the same slow exchanges that have defined it throughout. Soil continues to release moisture upward through plant roots in measured amounts. Leaves respond by maintaining internal pressure, preserving their shape and firmness across changing conditions. These processes occur steadily, forming a reliable background that supports continued presence. Ladybugs remain closely aligned with this stability. By staying in contact with plant surfaces, they experience moderated temperatures and balanced moisture levels. Heat moves gradually between body and surface, preventing sudden shifts. Moisture exchange remains controlled, supporting internal balance without the need for frequent repositioning. Plant surfaces continue to evolve incrementally. Waxes thicken, textures become more pronounced, and edges soften or curl as tissues age. Ladybugs respond through posture, maintaining grip and stability as surfaces change. This adaptability allows continued use of familiar structures over long spans of time. Feeding opportunities remain distributed across the same framework. As plant chemistry shifts with light and moisture, small insects relocate subtly along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these changes locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake remains modest and spaced across time, supporting maintenance rather than growth. Rest continues to occupy most of the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate efficiently, processing nutrients and maintaining tissues. Sensory awareness remains present, allowing subtle adjustments when conditions drift. Air movement within dense vegetation remains gentle. Even slight differences influence evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, favoring positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain consistent. As weeks accumulate, repetition reinforces continuity. Familiar surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain unchanged, and resting points persist unless conditions require adjustment. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined area. Through these ongoing interactions, the system remains balanced. Change unfolds gradually, allowing continuous alignment with physical conditions. Ladybugs continue their quiet presence within an environment shaped by slow material exchange and the steady passage of time. Over longer spans, the environment continues to operate through steady balance rather than fluctuation. Light follows predictable paths across the landscape, and plant surfaces respond by absorbing and releasing energy slowly. This measured exchange smooths transitions between warmth and coolness, maintaining conditions that remain within familiar limits. Ladybugs remain positioned within these moderated zones. Contact with leaves and stems allows gradual heat transfer, preventing rapid loss or gain. Moisture exchange remains balanced through close alignment with plant tissues, supporting internal stability without the need for constant movement. Plant growth continues at a restrained pace. New leaves form, while older ones age and change texture. These shifts alter surface characteristics without disrupting the overall framework. Ladybugs respond by adjusting posture and position locally, maintaining grip and balance as surfaces evolve. Feeding remains integrated within this stable structure. As plant chemistry changes incrementally, the distribution of small insects shifts slightly along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these changes without expanding their range, conserving energy while maintaining access to food. Rest continues to dominate daily activity. During stillness, posture remains compact, reducing exposure and conserving resources. Internal processes proceed at a steady pace, supporting maintenance and gradual repair. Sensory systems remain active, allowing subtle corrections when conditions drift. Air circulation within vegetation remains gentle. Even minor differences influence evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, favoring positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain consistent. As days blend into weeks, repetition strengthens predictability. Familiar surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain unchanged, and resting points persist. This consistency supports long-term presence within a limited area, reducing exposure to less stable conditions. Across the environment, similar processes unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles through soil and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this system, maintaining presence through alignment with slow physical processes that continue steadily over time. The environment continues to function through the same restrained exchanges that have defined it throughout. Plant structures remain anchored, drawing water from the soil and distributing it upward through internal pathways. Leaves respond by maintaining internal pressure, keeping surfaces firm and supportive even as external conditions fluctuate. These processes remain steady, providing a consistent framework for continued presence. Ladybugs remain closely aligned with this stability. Contact with plant surfaces allows gradual exchange of heat and moisture, preventing abrupt shifts that would disrupt internal balance. When conditions drift slightly, posture changes first, followed by small adjustments in position. These responses occur without urgency, conserving energy and maintaining continuity. Plant chemistry continues to influence the distribution of feeding opportunities. As sap flow changes gradually with light and moisture, small insects reposition themselves along stems and leaves. Ladybugs respond by following these shifts locally, remaining within familiar structures while maintaining access. Intake remains modest and spaced across time, supporting maintenance rather than change. Rest continues to dominate the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, reducing exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate efficiently, processing nutrients and supporting gradual repair. Sensory awareness remains present, allowing subtle corrections when conditions change. Air movement within vegetation remains gentle. Even small differences alter evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, favoring positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain consistent. These choices are expressed through position rather than relocation, preserving familiarity. As days pass, repetition reinforces predictability. Familiar surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain unchanged, and resting points persist. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a limited area. Across the landscape, similar processes unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles between soil, plant, and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this system, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that continue steadily over time. Through this sustained alignment, balance is maintained. Change continues, but at a pace that allows continuous adjustment without disruption. Ladybugs persist quietly within an environment shaped by steady material exchange and time. Across extended spans, the surrounding environment continues to operate through accumulation rather than transition. Light reaches plant surfaces in familiar patterns, warming them slowly before receding. This gradual exchange prevents sharp contrasts and allows temperature to remain within ranges that support steady activity. Leaves release stored warmth over time, smoothing the passage between day and night. Ladybugs remain positioned where these effects are most consistent. Contact with plant surfaces allows heat to move gradually between body and environment. Moisture exchange follows the same restrained pace, preventing dehydration during dry air and excess during humid conditions. These steady interactions support internal balance without requiring frequent movement. Plant tissues continue to regulate water internally. Moisture drawn from the soil moves upward through stems and into leaves, maintaining firmness and flexibility. Even as surface conditions change, this internal flow preserves supportive structure. Ladybugs remain aligned with these surfaces, benefiting from stability that persists beneath external variation. The texture of plant surfaces continues to evolve slowly. Waxes thicken, fine irregularities develop, and edges soften with age. These changes occur over long periods, allowing gradual adjustment. Ladybugs respond through posture, maintaining grip and balance as surfaces shift. Familiarity with these textures supports continued use without interruption. Feeding opportunities remain distributed across this stable framework. As plant chemistry responds to light and moisture, small insects adjust their position incrementally. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake remains modest, spaced evenly across time to support maintenance rather than change. Rest continues to occupy most of the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting surface exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate steadily, processing nutrients and supporting ongoing repair. Muscle activity remains low, reducing wear and preserving function over long spans. Air movement within vegetation remains gentle and variable. Even small differences influence evaporation and surface temperature. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, selecting positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain predictable. These choices are expressed through subtle repositioning rather than relocation, maintaining continuity. As days accumulate into weeks, repetition reinforces predictability. The same surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain consistent, and resting points persist unless conditions drift beyond familiar limits. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined area. Across the broader landscape, similar processes unfold continuously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles between soil, plant and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this system, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that unfold steadily over time. Through this sustained alignment, balance is maintained. Change remains present, but unfolds slowly enough to be absorbed without disruption. Within this steady flow, ladybugs continue their quiet presence, shaped by material exchange and steady time. As the environment continues to progress, the balance between structure and process remains intact. Plant surfaces persist as the primary interface through which energy and material exchange occurs. Leaves continue to moderate temperature by absorbing warmth during periods of light and releasing it gradually as conditions cool. This buffering effect remains consistent, limiting rapid change and supporting steady presence. Ladybugs remain positioned within these moderated zones, Contact with plant tissues allows gradual heat transfer that prevents sudden shifts in internal temperature. Moisture exchange follows a similar pattern, with water vapor moving slowly between body and surface. These restrained exchanges support internal systems without the need for frequent adjustment. Internal plant processes continue to operate quietly. Water drawn from the soil moves upward through vascular pathways, maintaining firmness and elasticity in leaves and stems. This internal flow persists even when surface conditions vary, preserving supportive structure over time. Ladybugs remain aligned with these surfaces, benefiting from stability that extends beneath visible change. Surface characteristics evolve incrementally. Waxes accumulate, textures become more pronounced, and edges alter subtly as tissues age. These changes occur over extended periods, allowing gradual adaptation. Ladybugs respond through posture and grip, maintaining balance as surfaces shift. Familiarity with these textures reduces the need for relocation and supports continued use. Feeding opportunities remain integrated within this framework. As plant chemistry responds to moisture and light, the distribution of small insects changes slowly along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake remains modest and spaced across time, supporting maintenance rather than growth. Rest continues to dominate daily activity. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate steadily, processing nutrients and supporting ongoing repair. Muscle activity remains restrained, reducing wear and preserving function across extended spans. Air movement within dense vegetation remains gentle. Slight variations influence evaporation and surface temperature, creating micro differences across plant layers. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, selecting positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain predictable. These selections occur through subtle repositioning rather than extended movement. As days pass, repetition reinforces continuity. Familiar surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain unchanged, and resting points persist unless conditions drift beyond familiar bounds. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined area. Across the landscape, similar processes unfold continuously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles between soil, plant, and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this system, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that unfold steadily over time. Through this sustained alignment, balance is maintained. Change continues without disruption, absorbed gradually through steady adjustment. In this ongoing flow, ladybugs persist quietly, shaped by material exchange and steady time. As the system continues, the surrounding environment remains shaped by slow, continuous exchange. Plant surfaces hold their position within the landscape, responding to light and moisture through internal adjustment rather than outward change. Leaves continue to absorb warmth during periods of light and release it gradually as conditions cool, maintaining a narrow range of surface temperatures that support steady presence. Ladybugs remain aligned with these moderated conditions. Contact with plant tissues allows heat and moisture to move gradually between body and surface. This restrained exchange prevents abrupt shifts and supports internal balance without the need for frequent movement. When conditions drift slightly, posture adjusts first, followed by minimal repositioning that restores comfort. Internal plant processes continue uninterrupted. Water drawn from the soil moves upward through stems and into leaves, maintaining firmness and elasticity. This internal flow persists even as surface conditions vary, preserving structural support over long spans of time. Ladybugs remain close to these surfaces, benefiting from stability that extends beneath visible change. Surface textures continue to evolve incrementally. Waxes accumulate, fine irregularities develop, and edges soften as tissues age. These changes occur slowly enough to allow continued use. Ladybugs respond through grip and orientation, maintaining balance as textures shift. Familiarity with these surfaces reduces the need for relocation and supports persistence within the same area. Feeding opportunities remain integrated within this stable framework. As plant chemistry responds to gradual shifts in light and moisture, the distribution of small insects adjusts subtly along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake remains modest and evenly spaced across time, supporting maintenance rather than change. Rest continues to dominate daily activity. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate steadily, processing nutrients and supporting ongoing repair. Muscle activity remains restrained, reducing wear and preserving function across extended periods. Air movement within vegetation remains gentle. Slight differences influence evaporation and surface temperature, creating small variations across plant layers. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, selecting positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain predictable. These selections occur through subtle repositioning rather than extended movement. As days accumulate into weeks, repetition reinforces continuity. Familiar surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain consistent, and resting points persist unless conditions drift beyond familiar limits. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined space. As time passes, the surrounding system remains steady, governed by gradual exchange rather than sudden shift. Light moves across the landscape in familiar patterns, warming plant surfaces slowly before receding. Leaves retain this warmth and release it over extended periods, softening transitions and maintaining conditions within narrow limits. Ladybugs remain positioned within these moderated zones. Contact with leaves and stems allows heat to transfer gradually between body and surface. Moisture exchange follows the same restrained pace, supporting internal balance without frequent movement. When conditions drift, posture changes first, followed by slight repositioning that restores stability. Plant tissues continue to regulate water internally. Moisture drawn from the soil moves upward through stems and into leaves, preserving firmness and flexibility. This internal circulation persists regardless of surface variation, providing a stable foundation for continued presence. Ladybugs remain aligned with these surfaces, benefiting from consistency that extends beneath visible change. Surface characteristics continue to evolve slowly. Waxes thicken, textures become more pronounced, and edges soften as tissues age. These changes unfold over long spans, allowing gradual adjustment. Ladybugs respond through grip and orientation, maintaining balance as surfaces shift. Familiarity with these textures supports continued use without interruption. Feeding opportunities remain distributed across the same framework. As plant chemistry responds to light and moisture, the distribution of small insects shifts incrementally. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake remains modest and evenly spaced across time, supporting maintenance rather than growth. Rest continues to occupy most of the daily cycle. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate steadily, processing nutrients and supporting ongoing repair. Muscle activity remains restrained, reducing wear and preserving function over extended periods. Air movement within vegetation remains gentle. Slight differences influence evaporation and surface temperature, creating subtle variation across plant layers. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these differences, selecting positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain predictable. These selections occur through subtle repositioning rather than extended movement. As days accumulate, repetition reinforces continuity. Familiar surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain consistent, and resting points persist unless conditions drift beyond familiar bounds. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined area. Across the environment, similar processes unfold continuously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles between soil, plant, and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. Ladybugs remain integrated within this system, moving and resting in alignment with slow physical processes that unfold steadily over time. As the surrounding environment continues, nothing signals a need for change. Plant structures remain in place, shaped by slow internal processes that regulate water, temperature, and form. Leaves continue to hold their shape through steady internal pressure, responding to light and moisture with gradual adjustment rather than visible movement. These processes unfold quietly, creating a stable framework that persists over time. Ladybugs remain aligned with this stability through constant surface contact. Heat moves slowly between body and leaf, preventing sudden loss or gain. Moisture exchange follows the same restrained pace, allowing internal balance to be maintained without frequent repositioning. When conditions drift slightly, posture changes first. A small adjustment restores equilibrium without interrupting continuity. Internal plant systems continue to operate beneath the surface. Water drawn from the soil moves upward through stems and into leaves, maintaining firmness and flexibility. This circulation persists regardless of surface variation, preserving structural support over long spans. Ladybugs remain close to these surfaces, benefiting from stability that extends beyond immediate conditions. Surface textures continue to evolve at a measured pace. Waxes accumulate gradually, fine irregularities develop, and edges soften as tissues age. These changes do not require relocation. Ladybugs respond through grip and orientation, maintaining balance as surfaces shift. Familiarity with these textures supports continued use without disruption. Feeding opportunities remain integrated within the same framework. As plant chemistry responds slowly to light and moisture, the distribution of small insects adjusts incrementally along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake remains modest and evenly spaced, supporting maintenance rather than growth. Air movement within vegetation remains gentle and variable. Even slight differences influence evaporation and surface temperature, creating subtle gradients across plant layers. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these variations, selecting positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain predictable. These selections occur through minimal repositioning rather than extended movement. As days accumulate into weeks, repetition reinforces continuity. The same surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain consistent, and resting points persist unless conditions drift beyond familiar limits. This regularity reduces variability and supports persistence within a confined space. Across the broader landscape, similar processes unfold simultaneously. Plants grow and age, moisture cycles between soil, plant, and air, and temperature shifts remain gradual. These changes do not disrupt the system. Instead, they are absorbed through steady adjustment, maintaining balance across time. Individual presence fades gradually rather than abruptly. Activity becomes less frequent, rest extends, and movement narrows to small corrections that maintain balance. Feeding continues in reduced amounts, sufficient to support essential functions. Internal repair processes remain active, addressing wear as it arises without accumulation. Within the surrounding environment, this transition blends seamlessly into continuity. Other individuals occupy the same surfaces, follow the same paths, and respond to the same physical cues. The system remains intact, sustained through replacement rather than interruption. Through this ongoing exchange, stability persists. Light continues its predictable movement, moisture circulates quietly, and temperature shifts remain restrained. Ladybugs remain integrated within this flow, neither accelerating nor withdrawing, but maintaining presence through alignment with slow physical processes that unfold steadily over time. Nothing marks an ending within the environment itself. Processes continue, surfaces remain supportive, and conditions stay within familiar limits. The system persists through repetition and gradual change, shaped by material exchange and steady time. The surrounding environment continues to operate without emphasis or conclusion. Plant surfaces remain layered and interconnected, responding to light and moisture through steady internal processes. Leaves continue to absorb warmth and release it slowly, moderating temperature and maintaining conditions within familiar limits. Moisture moves quietly between soil, plant, and air, sustaining structure without visible change. Ladybugs remain aligned with these conditions through constant surface contact. Heat and moisture exchange occur gradually, supporting internal balance without the need for frequent movement. When conditions drift slightly, posture adjusts, followed by minimal repositioning that restores stability. These responses remain subtle and continuous. Plant tissues continue to age and renew at a measured pace. Textures shift incrementally, waxes accumulate, and edges soften over time. These changes do not disrupt use. Ladybugs respond through grip and orientation, maintaining balance as surfaces evolve. Familiarity with these structures supports continued presence without interruption. Feeding remains modest and evenly spaced. As plant chemistry shifts slowly, the distribution of small insects adjusts along stems and leaves. Ladybugs follow these movements locally, remaining within the same plants while maintaining access. Intake supports maintenance rather than change, aligning with the steady pace of the environment. Rest continues to dominate daily activity. During stillness, posture remains compact, limiting exposure and conserving energy. Internal systems operate steadily, processing nutrients and supporting gradual repair. Muscle activity remains restrained, preserving function across extended periods. Air movement within vegetation remains gentle. Slight differences influence evaporation and surface temperature, creating subtle variation across plant layers. Ladybugs remain sensitive to these differences, selecting positions where airflow is reduced and conditions remain predictable. Across time, repetition sustains continuity. Surfaces are revisited, movement paths remain consistent, and resting points persist unless conditions drift beyond familiar bounds. The system continues through gradual exchange rather than transition, maintaining balance as processes unfold steadily. In this ongoing flow, presence remains integrated. Nothing signals change, and nothing marks an ending. Conditions persist, shaped by material exchange and the quiet passage of time. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you have enjoyed spending time moving through the world of ladybugs